Discover the surprising secrets of ancient Egyptians, how they endured transformative cold desert conditions like no one else. The bold letters echoed in Sarah Johnson's mind as she stood in the dimly lit art department among boxes of forgotten relics and dusty easels. Coming from an article she stumbled upon, it created a pang of excitement mixed with her usual dread. Her heart sank. Could something so monumental be the key to reigniting her passion for teaching? A passion that had gradually dimmed since the unexpected passing of her husband, leaving her to navigate the depths of grief and the daily grind of raising two teenagers alone. As the afternoon light waned, Sarah felt the weight of her responsibilities pressing against her. Grading papers loomed angrily on her desk, a reminder of obligations that seemed to multiply the deeper she sank into her solitude. Empathy clashed with desperation. She wanted to inspire her students to explore art's far-reaching narratives but felt tethered to reality, a life weighed down by bills, her children's uncertain futures, and the stifling pressure of self-doubt. Caught in this quagmire, Sarah thumbed through the research. The links between ancient Egyptian artistry and eco-sustainable practices sparked a flicker of her former self. If only her thoughts trailed. If only she could redirect her despair into something constructive. But what was she thinking? The whispers in her mind reminded her of Rachel, the ambitious department head, whose skepticism could strangle ideas before they breathed. Would Rachel consider this ambitious undertaking valuable, or would she snuff it out like an ember? A tumult brewed within as she recalled that morning's conversation with Emily about college. The thought of losing her daughter to study abroad left her feeling hollow, yet she understood the fierceness of Emily's ambitions. And Jake, his furrowed brow and restlessness tugged at her heart, a reflection of their now shattered family dreams. The weight was unbearable. How could she allow her kids to chase dreams when financial uncertainty lingered like a shadow? Before she could spiral further, Sarah remembered her fingers tracing the words describing the ancient Egyptians' endurance against nature's extremities. The project could connect the past to the present, harmonizing their struggles with an age-old narrative. The mere thought sent a surge of hope through her veins, but that hope danced with fear. Would the students care? Would the community support her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With Rachel already casting doubts, Sarah's heart raced, knowing resistance would come. She sensed the storm ahead with her colleagues, but a deeper tempest raged within. This project, an embodiment of her aspirations, felt like a last stand against erasure. Could she really see it through? As she imagined standing before her students with their art inspired by Egyptian resilience, a mix of determination and impending dread clawed at her. What if Rachel succeeded in dismantling her ambitions before they took shape? As shadows fell outside the window, painting her world in gray, the tension reached a fever pitch. Sarah could almost hear the whispers of disbelief flutter through the halls. The time for confrontation loomed, and she shivered at the thought. Would she fall back into the background or fight for her place in the light? The moment drew near, and Sarah braced herself for an outcome that could either dim her light further or ignite it once more. The following day dawned with a renewed sense of urgency. Sarah awoke, with her mind racing, tossing aside sleep as she envisioned her students, their faces illuminated with newfound understanding. Yet tangled in that exhilaration was a familiar dread. The thought of Rachel's critique weighed heavily on her, a specter that darkened her once bright intentions. The line between hope and despair had never felt so precarious. As she arrived early at the school, summer's warmth still clung stubbornly to the air. The empty halls echoed her footsteps, a stark reminder of her isolation. Each classroom window she passed seemed to mock her resolve, reminding her of aspirations buried beneath grief and responsibilities. She paused at her art room door, her sanctuary turned prison. The supplies were ample, but her confidence had become scarce. Settling at her cluttered desk, she reviewed her lesson plans, her nerves thick in the air. She had laid bare her ambitions on the page, but could she embody them in front of her students? The ancient Egyptians' journey captivated her. They thrived against adversity, transcending their circumstances through creativity and collaboration. It was what she needed to articulate to her students the art of resilience, how expressing one's struggle could serve as both a release and a guide. But how did she summon the courage to convey this message when her own well of inspiration felt so dry? The bell rang, fracturing her thoughts. Students began to filter in, their chatter a stark contrast to her inner tumult. Sarah forced a smile, offering them a piece of what she hoped would ignite their interest: tales of Egyptian art, its vibrancy against the stark backdrop of the desert. As their eyes lit with intrigue, she felt a flicker of kinship. Perhaps their collective curiosity might mend some of her fractured heart. Yet doubts slithered through her mind. What if they didn't care? What if Rachel was right, and her ideas were merely frivolous in the grand scheme of education? During the afternoon faculty meeting, the air was thick with anticipation. As Rachel's sharp voice sliced through the chatter, Sarah sat on the edge of her seat, determination battling uncertainty. Rachel launched into a review of new initiatives promising excellence. Sarah, heart pounding, seized an opportunity to present her vision. "I'd like to propose a project that connects ancient Egyptian art and environmental sustainability with our current curriculum," she blurted out, the words spilling nervously but defiantly. The room stilled, and eyes turned. Rachel's brow furrowed, skepticism evident. "Interesting. But how do you intend to incorporate this into a curriculum already packed with standards?" The challenge ignited something within Sarah. She had to speak not just to defend her project but to represent the passion that had lain dormant within her. "The Egyptians adapted to harsh climates through innovation," she asserted. "Their story encourages us to explore our own environmental challenges creatively. It's not just about teaching art, it's about resilience, hope, and empowerment. Our students can learn to express their struggles, just as the Egyptians did." The discomfort in the room shifted. A few heads nodded in agreement, while others turned skeptical. But for the first time in years, Sarah felt a spark, the pulse of her passion fighting back against the tide of doubt. Would Rachel find a way to extinguish it, or had Sarah planted a seed that could grow? As the meeting concluded, Sarah returned to her classroom, filled with the raw energy of both fear and exhilaration. She had spoken her truth, but it loomed uncertain in the atmosphere, waiting for acknowledgement or dismissal. Later that evening, as she mulled over her lesson plans, she reflected on her own life, the promise of resurrection woven into her struggle. She was on the verge of something substantial. This was all part of the transformative journey she had yearned for, but it demanded more than just bravery. It required an embrace of her vulnerability. Would she muster enough courage to confront Rachel again if the project faced more scrutiny? Just as she began to pen her ideas, another realization struck her. What if the vulnerabilities she feared revealing were the very things that could connect her to her students? The line between personal and professional had begun to blur, and perhaps that was where her true strength lay. In that moment of clarity, the choice was clear. She needed to engage with her students more deeply, fostering an environment where their voices echoed not just in art but in the narrative of contemporary challenges. But could she bear the backlash from Rachel? Would she gain the strength from her own insecurities in the face of adversity? As she swirled her pen above the page, bracing herself for the declarations of a new tomorrow, she understood one undeniable truth. The moment of truth arrived when one chooses to stand and be seen, despite the doubts waging war in their mind. With that notion, Sarah's next step crystallized. She would face whatever lay ahead to claim her part in the art of resilience, or risk fading quietly into the shadows. The following morning would demand an even greater confrontation, one she had long avoided. Would she truly step into her light, or would she remain hidden away in the darkness, tethered by fear? The sun seemed to rise with more fervor that morning, as if it too recognized the weight of the day ahead. Sarah stood before the mirror, the reflection staring back at her felt foreign. Instead of her usual apprehensive expression, a flicker of resoluteness was evident in her eyes. With every passing moment, the gravity of her previous day's declaration sank in deeper. She was no longer merely limping along through her responsibilities. She was realizing that she had a voice, a potential to incite change that was hers to own. The rush of adrenaline propelled her through her morning routine, the mundane tasks infused with a newfound purpose. Each brush-stroke of mascara and every button she fastened on her blouse felt akin to armor. She was preparing for battle, but this conflict was not against Rachel. It was against the formidable opponent within, the persistent whisper of self-doubt that threatened to unravel her progress. As she stepped into school, a palpable energy crackled in the air. The hallway buzzed with students discussing their topics for upcoming projects. Sarah glanced around and felt a pulse of connection with them. They were her allies in this creative expedition. Her heart raced not from anxiety, but from excitement and emotion she had been desperate to reclaim. She had a plan to bridge minds and hearts through art, a conduit for their stories and her own. When she entered her classroom, the aroma of fresh paint and the soft murmur of animated chatter cradled her anxieties, turning them to butterflies of anticipation. Today, she would invite her students into a conversation about resilience, not just the concept as abstract, but as lived experience. She knew they carried their own stories, struggles layered in the narrative tapestry of adolescence. Good morning, everyone. Today we're discussing not just art, but the stories behind it, she announced, her voice gaining strength as she proceeded. We're diving into how ancient Egyptians thrived in an unforgiving desert, not only through their ingenuity but through community, solidarity, and creativity. The class stirred to life, eyes wide with curiosity. Sarah decided to plunge deeper into the lesson than she had originally intended. Instead of lecturing, she opened the floor. What challenges do you see in your world? How do you think creativity has helped you and will help you? Students raised their hands hesitantly at first, but soon the floodgates opened. One shared about the pressures of social media, another about family expectations. Their voices, once tentative, grew bolder, threading into a tapestry of shared struggles. Sarah felt the chamber of her heart expand. This was the connection she craved. Yet, amid this epiphany, the specter of Rachel loomed. The questions gnawed at her. Would Rachel dismiss her classroom's new approach as frivolous? Would she undermine the empowerment taking root in her students? Sarah realized that she could very well be steering into a storm, but the genuine dialogue unfolding around her ignited a fierce determination. The resolve she had felt in front of Rachel now carried weight. By the end of the class, Sarah felt lighter, even euphoric, as her students left buzzing with ideas for their projects, their creativity swirling in vibrant expressions. But as her own exhilaration dimmed, she understood that addressing Rachel was inevitable. It was impossible to progress without facing her antagonist, both external and internal. In the solitude of her classroom, Sarah closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The confrontation loomed large before her. She needed to convey the significance of the project not just for her students, but as a conduit for her own journey of growth. Resolute, she vowed that this time she would frame her argument not solely around teaching art but around fostering empowerment, resilience, and dialogue. The day was drawing to a close, yet as darkness crept nearer, the shadows inside Sarah felt far more oppressive. She resolved herself for the discussion with Rachel to come. Would it be the clash that would cast her away again, or the moment that would solidify her purpose? The evening scene outside painted a stark contrast of brightness against her inner turmoil. As she prepared for the encounter, doubts crept in again. Her thoughts spiraled into a haunting refrain. Was she strong enough to withstand the potential fallout? Could she harness the strength born from vulnerability, or would she falter under scrutiny? As Sarah squared her shoulders and headed home, she recognized that uncharted paths lay ahead, filled with both opportunity and risk. Perhaps the greatest transformation awaited her in that precarious balance. The path beckoned, and with it, the question lingered: would she emerge victorious as the architect of her own narrative, or would she surrender to the darkness that had shadowed her for so long? With the afternoon light filtering through her kitchen window, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty clinging to her like an unwelcome shroud. The comfort of her home, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a crucible of anxious thoughts. Alone with her swirling emotions, she breathed in and out slowly, attempting to find a moment of clarity amid the chaos brewing in her mind. The conversation with Rachel could easily veer off into confrontation. Sarah could almost hear the familiar, cutting tones of her superior dismissing her ideals offhandedly. Yet, deep within her, a flicker of resolve had taken root. If she had managed to spark something meaningful in her classroom, it was time to articulate that impact to Rachel. She envisioned not just defending her methods, but illuminating their potential for real, transformative learning. As she stirred a pot on the stove, Sarah's mind retraced the lessons shared with her students. Each story they unfolded, the pressures, the heartaches, the triumphs, reminded her that true artistry resided within vulnerability. No longer could she tolerate stifling her voice. This was not just about presenting a curriculum, it was about crafting a dialogue. The thought of framing her discussion this way sparked a fire within her. The clock ticked, insisting on the inevitable passage of time. She wouldn't be caught unprepared. She would lay out her vision thoughtfully, anticipating Rachel's challenges. As plans took shape in her mind, her fingers danced over the countertop, gathering materials for a presentation she would present the next day. A visually engaging layout emerged, images of ancient art juxtaposed with the students' personal projects, connecting generations through shared resilience and creativity. That first step was promising, but it also stoked the embers of fear. What if Rachel undermined her effort? What if her colleagues sided against her? Sarah wrestled with the prospect of rejection, stealthily creeping in like a thief in the night. Then she stopped, glaring at those thoughts. They had haunted her long enough. Confrontation wasn't just about fighting off Rachel. It was about acknowledging the growth she had nurtured in herself and her students, claiming space at the table of influence that had always felt out of reach. Night settled quietly outside, the world just beyond her window dimming into hues of gray. Sarah turned her thoughts inward, confronting the ghosts of self-doubt that often flared up. They had thrived in secrecy, but she was no longer willing to allow them power over her. She would confront Rachel armed with a shield of clarity, her students, their dreams, and their blossoming talents. The hours slipped away, and soon a jolt of energy infused her spirit as she finished her preparations. She practiced her points aloud in the mirror, each statement crafting a bridge between her fears and her courage. Morning arrived with its usual bloom of possibility, and as she dressed, she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline return, this time not merely as anxiety but as a wave of empowerment. She would not approach Rachel with trepidation but with intention, articulating a vision that underscored the importance of creativity and dialogue. When she arrived at school, a renewed fire flickered in her chest as she walked through the halls. But the real test lay ahead in that meeting with Rachel. Sarah paused outside the office door, a final breath fueling her resolve. What if this pivotal moment could alter the course of her career? What if, in confronting Rachel, she not only defended her classroom but affirmed her very identity as an educator? As she gripped the doorknob, a pulse of thrill raced through her. This was where transformation lay. Stepping inside, she sensed not only the threshold of confrontation but a doorway to the person she was learning to become. But uncertainty still loomed like an ominous cloud, threatening to overshadow her clarity. Would Rachel's response derail her burgeoning confidence, or would it reinforce the empowerment she sought for herself and her students? The office was constricted, the air thick with unspoken tension. Rachel looked up from her papers, her expression unreadable, as if she had been expecting this confrontation. Sarah's heart thumped loudly in her chest, each pulse a reminder of the weight of the moment. This was at the crossroads between stagnation and progress. Sarah, Rachel began, her tone clipped yet curious. What brings you here today? Thank you for meeting with me, Sarah replied, forcing a steadiness into her voice. I wanted to discuss my approach in the classroom, specifically the project my students have been working on, and its impact. Rachel raised an eyebrow, a slight challenge in her gaze. Go on. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah launched into her presentation. She outlined the vision she had crafted, the connection between ancient art and the personal stories her students shared. The enthusiasm bubbled within her as she spoke, feeling the narrative solidify around her words. She highlighted the transformative nature of their work, punctuating her points with enthusiasm that surprised even herself. Yet, as she analyzed Rachel's response, Sarah noticed the slightest flicker of skepticism on her superior's face. "Sarah," Rachel interjected, "you're passionate, but we both know that not every project can align with standardized outcomes. These students need to be prepared for assessments." The remark hit hard. Challenges lay ahead, just as she anticipated. But Sarah felt a ripple of determination rise within her, a response brewing just beneath the surface. "Their assessments don't have to detract from creativity, Rachel. We can cultivate critical thinkers alongside meeting those standards. The insight they gain through this process lasts far beyond what they can memorize for a test." Silence filled the room, thick like fog. Sarah's heart raced as she awaited Rachel's reply, the enormity of her words echoing in the stillness. She had dared to challenge Rachel, to propose a paradigm shift. But would it yield the results she longed for, or merely sever their professional relationship? Rachel's expression sharpened. "You must understand that teaching requires balance. It's essential we prioritize what's measurable. Emotional connections can't take precedence in our curriculum." Frustration flared within Sarah, but it became clear this wasn't just an argument for a project. It was a clash of philosophies. Rachel's adherence to the status quo felt like chains threatening to bind Sarah's aspirations. Instead of retreating into anger, Sarah envisioned her students, their smiling faces, the raw emotions they poured into their work. She had witnessed growth, not just academically but personally. "I'm not asking to dismiss those standards, Rachel. This can enhance their engagement and retention. A creative approach can coexist with structure. It's about redefining how we create that connection." The room pulsed with the energy of unspoken possibilities. Rachel leaned back in her chair, considering Sarah's words with an intensity that felt both hopeful and precarious. "You're making a case," she finally said, her voice equal parts intrigue and hesitation. "But change won't come easy." Sarah sensed the shifting tide, the crack in Rachel's rigid demeanor offering a glimpse of opportunity. "I'm willing to work collaboratively to ensure we meet those goals. I believe in creating a learning environment where students feel valued. This transformation can invigorate their academic experiences, and ours as educators." Rachel paused, her expression softened yet guarded. "I need time to think this through, but I appreciate your initiative. It shows growth on your part." Sarah's heart soared, but a simmering apprehension lingered. Had she made her case, or merely sparked a debate? With Rachel's response still uncertain, she realized the journey ahead would be laden with challenges, yet filled with potential. Leaving the office, Sarah felt uneasy but revitalized. This confrontation had propelled her further along her path of self-discovery, yet the road remained steep and winding. Would she become a beacon for her students, enabling them to express their authentic selves against the rigid structures of the educational system? As she walked through the school corridors, the questions echoed in her mind. Facing Rachel had been just the beginning. How could she navigate this uncharted terrain of advocacy without losing herself in the process? The resonance of Rachel's guarded acceptance lingered, leaving Sarah at the precipice of new possibilities. It was time to transform the energy of this encounter into action, to define how far she was willing to go for her beliefs and for her students. All the while, uncertainty hung heavy. Was Rachel's turn of heart genuine, or just a fleeting moment? The next chapter of Sarah's journey had begun, but could she consolidate her newfound stance into lasting change? The hum of fluorescent lights accompanied Sarah as she navigated the bustling hallways of Oak Ridge High School. Each footstep felt unsteady beneath the weight of her ambition, the conversation with Rachel reverberating in her mind. The subtle encouragement nestled within Rachel's guarded acceptance felt both exhilarating and fraught with potential pitfalls. How could she take this fragile momentum and shape it into something transformative? Settling into her classroom, Sarah meticulously arranged the students' artwork, a vibrant array of representations drawn from their recent assignments. Each piece echoed their journeys, capturing voices that often went unheard within the confines of structured assessments. They were testaments to the resilience and creativity bubbling beneath the surface. As the first bell rang, a rush of students filled the room, laughter spilling over as they settled at their desks. But Sarah's gaze drifted beyond them, focused inward. She was still wrestling with doubt. What was the strategy to bridge her educational ideals with Rachel's stringent expectations? "Ms. Carter, can we finish our projects today?" chimed in Mia, an eager sophomore, her creativity radiating with a confidence Sarah envied yet admired. This was the spark Sarah had hoped to ignite. "I want to add more details about the myths we researched." "That's great initiative, Mia. Let us devote today's class to refining those projects." Sarah felt a surge of energy. This was her moment not just to support Mia but to demonstrate how creativity could thrive alongside the curriculum mandates. As she walked among the students, she offered guidance, nudging them toward deeper reflections on their work. "What story does your art tell?" she asked, her voice modulating with conviction. They began engaging in meaningful dialogue, layer upon layer of understanding unfolded. This was growth not merely in preparing for tests but in fostering critical thinking and self-expression. Yet as she reveled in the atmosphere of creativity, the shadow of Rachel's words loomed large. "Can I sustain this momentum? What if the administration isn't receptive?" The questions gnawed persistently, threading doubt through her hopeful tapestry of change. At lunch, Sarah shared her thoughts with a fellow teacher, Mark, someone known for his innovative approaches. His feedback struck a chord. "You've got the right idea, but remember to document everything. Collect evidence of their growth, show that creativity leads to better outcomes on assessments. Make it tangible." The suggestion sparked something within Sarah. She could not only advocate for her philosophy, she could build a case. This would require meticulous planning and strategic execution, but she was driven. "What if I start compiling student reflections along with their projects? I could create a portfolio to present to Rachel," she mused, a sense of purpose washing over her. As the weeks unfurled, she devoted evenings to crafting the portfolios, blending artwork with student reflections. Each piece tackled insights and growth, entwining creativity with measurable outcomes. But as the deadlines approached, the strain of balancing her ambition with school requirements grew heavier. One rainy afternoon, Sarah stood in front of her mirror, anxiety swirling in her gut. Was she prepared to face Rachel again? The stakes had never felt higher. Success hinged not just on her students' portfolios, but on her ability to articulate the value of their process to an audience that may not be ready to listen. Each deep inhale fed her determination. "This isn't just about art, it's about changing perceptions," she thought, envisioning her students thriving not just as learners, but as articulate advocates for their own educational journeys. Navigating the office's fluorescent glare once more, Sarah felt her heart quicken with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Rachel could choose to embrace this new perspective, or she could push back. But the confrontation was no longer just a battle, it was an opportunity for transformative growth, for both Sarah and her students. With newfound resolve, Sarah approached Rachel's office, portfolios in hand, ready to advocate not just for her own beliefs but for the voices of her students that had finally found expression. She was prepared to confront the status quo, but would Rachel rise to the challenge of change alongside her? The door to Rachel's office questioned her confidence as she stood there. This was at the moment where theory met reality. She rapped her knuckles lightly against the wood before stepping inside, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Rachel looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "Sarah, what brings you by?" There was an edge of curiosity, a crack in the armor that Sarah hoped to exploit. "I wanted to share something I've been working on," Sarah began, setting the portfolios carefully on the table between them. The polished surface felt intimidating, emblematic of the high stakes at play. "It's a collection of my students' projects alongside their reflections. I believe it illustrates how creativity can enhance their understanding and engagement." Rachel's brow furrowed slightly as she reviewed the titles on the portfolios. "I commend your effort, but I hope you understand the importance of adhering to academic standards and assessments." The familiar tone struck like a bell, a harsh reminder of the bureaucratic world Sarah was eager to disrupt. But she also sensed something different in Rachel's demeanor, a hint of curiosity mixed with skepticism. Sarah seized her chance to engage. I understand the importance of standards, Sarah replied, her voice steady yet passionate. But these portfolios exemplify deeper learning. They show not just what students can memorize, but how they can connect personally to what they learn. She indicated the first portfolio, filled with vibrant images and heartfelt reflections. Mia's project, for instance, represents her journey to embrace her cultural identity. This assignment made her more invested in her education. The room grew quiet as Rachel flipped through the pages, her expression betraying a mix of impression and contemplation. Sarah watched for any glimmer of openness in Rachel's usually stoic gaze, her heart racing with a cocktail of hope and fear. What if I can demonstrate a correlation between creative engagement and standardized success? Sarah dared to suggest, her mind working faster than her mouth could keep up. We can assess their understanding rigorously while still fostering their individuality and critical thinking skills. Rachel glanced up, an eyebrow raised, her interest evidently piqued. You think this creative approach could lead to improved outcomes? Yes, Sarah asserted with conviction. What if the portfolios not only showcase their art but also enhance their performance on standardized tests? We could track growth over the semester. She felt her pulse quicken, as if shifting from doubt to determination. This wasn't just a defense of art, it was a fight for her students' futures. I see where you're going, Rachel admitted slowly. But gathering data is one thing, applying it effectively is another. You'll need more than creativity. This requires a structured approach. The conversation morphed into a debate. Moments of doubt began to flicker within Sarah's thoughts. Could she balance Rachel's demand for structure with her own desire to foster a creative environment? As Rachel continued to express her concerns, Sarah felt an internal tug-of-war, grappling with the reality that changing an educational paradigm wasn't merely about brilliant ideas but would require concrete evidence and strategic planning. Let us start small, Rachel suggested at last, gesturing to the portfolios. If these students can demonstrate clear outcomes, we can explore expanding this approach in the curriculum beyond just your classroom. Relief washed over Sarah alongside a tinge of apprehension. This was a step, but it felt precariously small given how far she wanted to go. Thank you, Sarah managed, the thrill of potential intertwined with the gnawing fear of being boxed into compliance. Crisis and opportunity intertwined in a delicate balance as she left Rachel's office, the echoes of their conversation ringing in her ears. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with more challenges than she had anticipated. She needed a plan that would satisfy Rachel while staying true to her vision. Time was not on her side, the year was winding down, and each moment mattered. Determined, Sarah returned to her classroom, ready to refine her students' portfolios further and prepare them for the scrutiny that lay ahead. But just as she reached for the door handle, a fleeting thought struck her. What if she truly could redefine the limits of education by proving that even the most rigid systems could accommodate the beautiful mess of creativity? The uncertainty hung in the air as she stepped inside, the door closing softly behind her. The question lingered, could she blend the demands of structure and creativity into a compelling case that even Rachel couldn't ignore? Stepping into her classroom, Sarah felt the familiar solace envelop her like a comforting embrace. The chaotic mess of art supplies and student projects cluttered the tables, a stark contrast to the polished ambience of Rachel's office. This was her domain where passion pulsed beneath the surface of every unfinished canvas and half-written essay. She inhaled deeply, wishing to imprint the scent of possibility into her memory. But as rejuvenating as this space felt, the pressure to prepare her students for scrutiny strained her focus. The portfolios needed to emerge not just as a collection of works but as a testament to increased engagement paired with observable outcomes. A sense of urgency tightened inside her. She had been granted a small opening, and she intended to burst through it. All right, team, she announced, gathering her students around. Their innocent eyes sparkled with expectation. We're going to take a unique approach to your portfolios. I need your creativity now more than ever. We're not just making art, we're telling stories through your work to show how your creativity has helped you learn. Their enthusiasm was palpable, and Sarah felt a flicker of optimism. As the students began to discuss their ideas, she penned down a strategy, scribbling notes on a whiteboard. She realized that what Rachel wanted was clarity, quantifiable results. But clarity didn't have to diminish the creativity she cherished. She initiated brainstorming sessions, guiding students to articulate how personal art connections had enhanced their understanding. Questions emerged, threading their inquiry deeply through their reflections. How had art changed their perspectives? In what ways did their projects fuel their desire to learn? Yet, with every session, doubts infiltrated Sarah's mind. Could she really secure the data to satisfy Rachel's demands? With heads bent in concentration, her students excitedly shared insights, but Sarah's heart raced with uncertainty. Was she risking her students' authentic voices in the name of academic approval? As days turned into weeks, a prevailing tension gnawed at Sarah's resolve. She busied herself with data tracking methods and formulated spreadsheets, efforts to demonstrate progress alongside artistic expression. The burden felt heavy on her shoulders. Each piece of data felt like a rejected fragment of creativity clamoring for attention. Through sleepless nights, she wrestled with the duality of her role. On the one hand, she wanted to break down rigid walls, champion her students, and embrace innovation. On the other hand, a pragmatic voice insisted that if she hoped to navigate the bureaucratic landscape, she needed to adapt. In moments of quiet reflection, Sarah came to realize that this struggle echoed her own journey as an artist, a quest for identity, acceptance, and validation. She could feel the gravitational pull of her vision, but the fear of inadequacy loomed over her, threatening to derail her efforts. One afternoon, during a particularly fervent class discussion, Sarah sensed a shift. When one of her students, Nathan, shared how he felt more inquisitive and engaged because of his portfolio project, a spark ignited. The data had the potential to illuminate more than just numbers. It could showcase a narrative of transformation and growth. Inspired, Sarah decided to seek external validation of their outcomes. After considerable research, she reached out to educational consultants who specialized in creative learning environments, their insights potentially offering an avenue to supplement her case with empirical evidence. Just as she sent off the email, filled with renewed hope for the collaboration, she felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. Expectations loomed larger, and the trajectory of her desire to push educational boundaries all hung precariously on these emerging partnerships. Sarah took a moment, allowing the weight of her decisions to settle within her. If she could hear the voices of her students echoing through their portfolios, could she trust that those voices would be enough? With uncertainty still suffocating her spirit, she wrestled with the realization that she was venturing into unknown territory, her heart racing at the thought of what might lie ahead. A single thought remained imprinted on her mind: the true challenge wasn't merely creating a blend of structure and creativity, but rather daring to confront the possibility that her vision could evolve into something transformative. As the days counted down and the opportunity grew closer, she was faced with the question that consumed her: what would her discovery entail, and could she emerge triumphant, proving that creativity could indeed thrive within the rigid constructs of academia? The following weeks were a whirlwind of planning, intensity, and unexpected revelations for Sarah. As she delved deeper into her partnership with the educational consultants, the pressure amplified. Each meeting brimmed with ideas that inspired vast possibilities, yet her heart trembled with trepidation. Would these academic titans truly grasp the essence of her classroom, the raw, unfiltered creativity that poured from her students? As the consultants dissected her curriculum, Sarah felt as if they were analyzing the very marrow of her teaching philosophy. They pored over her spreadsheets, probing for data that could corroborate the narrative threads her students wove through their portfolios. Yet, among their sharp critiques and analytical approaches, she sensed a disconnect, a mechanical dissection of something that thrived on emotion and instinct. You must quantify their impressions, one consultant suggested, emphasizing how engagement statistics were imperative. If you don't have hard numbers to prove growth, no one will take this seriously. The suggestion dug deeper than she anticipated. Each statistic felt like a tether pulling on her essence, a stark reminder of the institutional pressures suffocating her original vision. Her instincts screamed for her to return to the heart of creation, to the stories that were waiting to be told, organic, human, and intricate, but the fear that her effort would be deemed inadequate kept her silenced. Drained yet reflective, she returned to her classroom during lunch breaks, seeking the solace that only her students could provide. Sitting among the worn desks, she found Nathan sketching a storyboard, his pencil dancing across paper with newfound zeal. "Nathan," she prompted, leaning closer to observe his work, "how do you feel about your project?" "Honestly, Ms. Carter, it's my favorite part of school this year," he replied, eyes gleaming with passion. "I'm able to say things I didn't know I wanted to express." Sarah's heart swelled. In that moment, she was reminded of why she had entered this profession, to ignite curiosity and foster personal connections. But her internal conflict simmered. Did this expression matter amidst the required verifications of progress? Compelled by Nathan's enthusiasm, she decided to pivot slightly. Perhaps the data didn't have to overshadow the individual journeys her students were taking. She envisioned a project that integrated both quantitative and qualitative dimensions, a culminating exhibition that would allow for creativity while still addressing institutional demands. If she could create a narrative that captivated an audience, perhaps then she could achieve both objectives: her students' stories and the evidence Rachel sought. That evening, she mapped out her strategy on a fresh whiteboard. The exhibition would showcase not just their artworks but also the development process behind each piece, illustrated through student reflections, video recordings of their artistic journeys, and even peer critiques drawn from their brainstorming sessions. She would invite parents, faculty, and even Rachel, entreating them to witness the profound transformations her students experienced firsthand. As she stood back to admire her plan, a mix of exhilaration and apprehension washed over her. Would this ambitious endeavor resonate with the broader educational community? Was she brave enough to showcase the intimacy of her students' experiences while still pleading for academic acknowledgement? The next morning, Sarah presented her idea to her class. Their faces lit up with excitement as they discussed the aspects each one wanted to contribute to the exhibition. For the first time, Sarah felt a levity begin to replace her previous anxiety. They were creating something real, a telling mosaic of their collective journey. As the exhibition date loomed closer, the undercurrents of uncertainty remained. However, it was now laced with a burgeoning conviction that their stories, melded with data, could indeed challenge preconceived notions of creativity in education. But just as confidence began to wrap around her like a comforting cloak, an email from Rachel arrived, the subject line ominously direct: "Concerns regarding your project." Sarah's heart sank. What challenges lay ahead, and could she safeguard her students' voices against potential criticism? As she opened the message, she braced herself for the storm that might ensue, realizing that her pursuit for validation was about to face its most daunting test yet. The message from Rachel was concise, but it bore the weight of authority, every word calculated to punctuate the fear that had been growing inside Sarah. "While I appreciate your initiative, I have serious reservations about this forthcoming exhibition. It could distract from our essential curriculum. Are you prepared to face potential backlash from parents and faculty who may not see the value in intertwining creativity with structured learning?" As Sarah absorbed Rachel's concerns, she felt the familiar creep of doubt threatening to tear through her hard-won resolve. Nevertheless, an ember of determination ignited. Her journey had never been about conforming to the expectations of others. It was about breaking barriers, instilling in her students a belief in their own creative power. That morning, she resolved to face Rachel again, not with trepidation but with unwavering conviction. She crafted a passionate response, articulating the significance of the students' artistic expressions and the measurable growth they demonstrated through their work. Instead of feeling intimidated by Rachel's authority, Sarah aimed to emphasize the story behind the data, that each piece of art was an insight into resilience, collaboration, and the raw power of creative thought. Days turned into a blur of frantic preparations. The exhibition loomed large like a lighthouse in a foggy sea, guiding her through moments of confusion and uncertainty. Sarah felt a sense of urgency. This was her opportunity to prove the efficacy of blending creativity with academic rigor. As the exhibition day approached, she transformed her classroom into a gallery that pulsed with the vibrant energetics of her students' stories. Each piece was framed not just to reflect artistic endeavors but to echo the voices woven throughout the process, their struggles, revelations, and artistic growth. Sarah hung a banner that read, "Art as a reflection of resilience," allowing her students' expressions to speak for themselves. When the day finally arrived, the school buzzed with excitement intermixed with a hint of apprehension. Parents, faculty, and even Rachel had confirmed their attendance. Sarah took a moment to collect herself, reflecting on her journey and the path her students were about to tread. This exhibition was no longer just about her project. It was about celebrating her students' narratives, a testament to their perseverance and creativity. As attendees filtered into the classroom-turned-exhibition hall, Sarah's heart raced. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation and curiosity. The students took on roles as both artists and guides, enthusiastically sharing the stories behind their creations. Parents brimmed with pride, marveling at the passion emanating from their children. For every skepticism expressed by colleagues, Sarah could see her students' confidence glowing brightly, none more so than Nathan, who effortlessly articulated how art had helped him cope with family pressures. Then, Rachel arrived, her presence commanding yet contemplative. Sarah held her breath as Rachel perused the exhibitions. The spark of doubt flickered in her gut when Rachel approached Nathan. He explained his project with poise, weaving in personal anecdotes that illustrated transformation and engagement. Sarah watched as Rachel nodded, pausing only to absorb the depth of what she was hearing. As the evening wore on, Rachel approached Sarah, a new glimmer in her eyes. "This is impressive," she said, a hint of acknowledgement creeping into her tone. "Your students have articulated their journeys beautifully. I must admit, I underestimated the impact this could create." With those words, a rush of relief swept through Sarah. This was the validation she so desperately sought, the acceptance that her vision could exist within the framework of traditional education, transforming it into something richer and more profound. "Incorporating creative methods doesn't have to be a distraction," Rachel continued, her voice measured but less guarded. "I can collaborate with you to adapt elements of this exhibition into a broader curriculum strategy. Your students deserve a platform to express themselves. Let us develop a framework that marries creativity with accountability." A surge of triumph surged through Sarah. Finally, clarity emerged from chaos. This collaboration with Rachel could fortify the very foundations of her approach and inspire others to foster similar environments in their classrooms. They could establish a program that connected artistic exploration with academic achievement, demonstrating that resilience wasn't an abstract concept but a tangible framework for learning. That night, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had not only shifted Rachel's perspective but had also ignited her students' voices, a feat she once feared was unattainable. This was her zenith. She had emerged from a landscape of doubt to cultivate a successful narrative that fostered both creativity and academic rigor. In the end, Sarah had not only found her own redemption but had constructed a bridge that could redefine educational experiences for her students and countless others to come. The journey was fraught with challenges that would mend through courage and perseverance. But now she stood poised on the verge of something transformative. As she looked around her classroom, filled with artwork that resonated with the echoes of resilience and creative expression, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. Her students were not just learners, they were storytellers, inventors, and resilient warriors. This was her moment. She had stepped into a world of opportunities, embracing the arduous but rewarding journey of being not just an educator, but a catalyst for change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is essential. Comment your reactions and theories about this astonishing conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformational journey. This is the moment to show your support and help us inspire more incredible stories of personal growth. Don't wait even one more second to share.